All right, you guys, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the place where we uncover the stories, the strategies, and the turning points behind people who are transforming lives and industries. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've ever struggled with self-doubt, destructive behaviors, or just feeling stuck in repeating the same patterns, maybe in your business or in your life or in your relationships, today's episode will probably hit home. Don't you touch that dial, because before we can even try to influence the world around us, we often have to learn how to influence ourselves. And that is going to be the main theme of what we're talking about today. And as you would know, and as you will discover later on, this is the number one place to find exclusive insights from experts who have solved real problems. And as I have mentioned, today we're going to be diving deep into emotional intelligence, personal transformation, and leadership from the inside out. So if you enjoy conversations that challenge how you think or how you live, then make sure you subscribe on whatever platform that you're watching or listening this on, because every episode is designed to help you build a more prosperous life and business. Now, today, I'm really excited about our guest, Cindy Tien. Now, Cindy, welcome to the show.
Hello, Prosper. I'm so happy to be here, and I made a bit of time to watch some of your other videos earlier, and you've really got some good stuff out there. So well done, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now I'm a little bit embarrassed because in front of me, I've got the EQ Maven, the titanium hipster, and also the certified speaking professional. So when you say that, I am a little bit humbled. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today there, Cindy.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And those are just names, right? They're just shells. And the reason why I had to come up with them is just so people know how to relate to someone, to you. What do you do? Who are you? But I think beneath it all, I'm just a regular Singaporean girl, still have my own struggles. I still feel like at times I'm this 14-year-old who still goes to school, even though I'm, like 3 decades older than that. So I'm really just Cindy Tien from Singapore.
Absolutely. Now, Cindy, learning never ends. And for those that are watching right now, you've heard that right. She's literally part metal, but she's very humble in all the accomplishments that she has received. And this is the reason why. All right. So Cindy has battled addiction, near bankruptcy, and a rare hip degeneration disease that has actually given her joints something of a story in and of themselves, which I think she's going to be maybe alluding to a little bit later. But Cindy now walks and occasionally struts in 2 titanium hips, and some people have all their body parts there, but they still can't accomplish what this lady can achieve in one single sitting. All right, so it actually raises a very important question for you who's watching this right now. And I want you to type in the comments below. Have you ever maybe gone through something so difficult that it completely changed the way you see life? And I want you to type the words transformation in the comments if you believe adversity can actually become your greatest teacher, because I think as we go through Cindy's story, we're going to be noticing a little bit of that. And now, from all that I've mentioned earlier on, she now works with leaders, sales teams, and organizations around the world, helping them confront something that a lot of people try to avoid. And it is clearly their BS. And she's not afraid to say it, because she's even written a book, which is called Inside. She'll be talking about that also in the show today. It is just to break through your BS so you can actually influence yourself. And it actually goes through something that so many of us think is, not their fault, or they're always looking for somebody to blame. When I was growing up, my parents always told me, if you're pointing at somebody three fingers are actually pointing back at you. And we are going to be exploring that, because before you can influence anyone else, either your team, your clients, or your family, you literally have to influence yourself first. All right. So, Cindy, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. All right. Let's, jump straight to this and maybe rewind a little. So, before the books, before the speaking career, before being the EQ Maven and the titanium hipster, who was Cindy?
That is such a simple and yet profound question all at the same time. Who was Cindy? I'm this girl in Singapore. Growing up, I lived in a shop house with 20 people in the same shop house, and we had one toilet, which was not a very sanitized toilet. And at that time, because I was and among all my cousins in my generation, I was the youngest kid. And my parents at that time, both of them were working. My father used to be an air crew, so he used to have to travel around. And my mom was a secretary, so full-time jobs, both of them. And because they were really, really busy, they kind of put me into different homes, different nannies for them to take care of me. And I think that affected me quite a bit. I grew up with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-doubt. When I eventually went home to live with my grandmother, she didn't ill-treat me, of course. Not gonna paint it as that, but she wasn't the kindest to me. So I think I've always grown up having this feeling that I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, and not good enough. But the interesting thing about that is I didn't show up in a not confident way, because to be honest, all my friends who knew me since I was a child would say, "Gosh, Cindy, you're the most courageous, you're the most confident person." But for me, it was a lot of masking that I was doing. I was masking myself as this person who was tough. I would go to people, and when I was 14 years old, I'll go to a girl without any comms. I'll just smack her, drag her to the restroom, and just beat the crap out of her, right? So I had a lot of that false bravado. And underneath all of that was just a little girl who felt unloved, who felt unseen, who felt invisible. And I felt that there was so much that I had to do to just prove myself and to just be worthy of being in this world out there. So if that's the question. That's how I will answer the question. I still think that I am this young girl who still yearns for love, yearns to have influence among her friends, yearns to be seen. And I think all of us have that desires too. It's just that we become more grown-up adults and we don't talk about it as openly. But I still see myself as a little girl who has those yearnings.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there. Now, Cindy, you're opening us up to a childhood where, like you said, you yearned to be seen and to be heard. Could that have stemmed from the fact that there was 20 other or 19 other kids in or people in that family, which made it very difficult to stand out? And the only way that you could stand out was maybe to manifest yourself as the rebellious one who was showing this type of bravado to other
Mm.
people outside.
Yeah, absolutely. For me at that time, home was somewhere where I came home, and I think I speak to a lot of children and parents as well, right? Consider what kind of conditions you're setting up. You're setting yourself up for your family and your kids at home, because I think all our family members, our parents mostly, they do love us and we know that they love us. But for me, I think it was just coming home to a place whereby nobody was really validating you. Nobody was really telling you that you're important. For me, it was that. But I knew my parents loved me. So because I didn't feel important, I felt that and this was, it could be just my personality. I had to have, I had to create that importance in school. So at home, invisible, it's okay. Yeah.
Mm.
But when I go to school, I want to be seen, and I make sure I was seen in whatever ways possible. And I wasn't good academically. So let me just help myself to be seen in other ways.
Mm. Okay, so at school, when that would happen, were there any consequences or was there any repercussions for you doing this to other kids that would have then become maybe addictive, that at least somebody sees me, even if it's in the wrong light?
Oh, absolutely. I think my need to be seen actually stemmed from when I was a child all the way up till adulthood. It just manifests itself in different ways, right? So as
Mhm.
a child, like I mentioned, I would be like this gangster. I go around and confront other girls. I came from a girls' school here in Singapore, and I have some girlfriends with me, and I was the tiniest among all of them, and they would join me and we'll go and beat people up and all that. And thankfully, at the time we were young, so things were mild, right? We were not like stabbing people, none of that. but we would bully people, right? We would smack them, bring them to the toilet, and little kiddo things like that. And of course, when you start doing these things, you would also start to meet different people who are also doing these kinds of things. So I think just getting involved in the teenage delinquent gangster type of community, started smoking. Not that that's a big deal, but also started taking other forms of drugs like pills and all that, and sniffing glue. So all that kind of like slowly and itched into my life. And I think as I grew up, it kind of became a little bit worse because now it's not about beating people up anymore because you're going to go to jail. So how else can I get all of this attention? That's now then going partying, right? Getting myself drunk. So all of these behaviors. And I used to ask myself, why are you like that? Because my mom asked me, why are you like that? Because your brother is not like that. And I used to struggle, why are you like that? And I remember watching this gentleman, what's his name? Gabriel Mate. Gabriel Mate. He's a physician that talks a lot about trauma, and how it stems from childhood. And he once said this sentence which I totally resonated with. He said, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you when you go through that trauma. So two children might be going through the same thing, and one person turns out absolutely okay, and the other person is just so messed up.
Absolutely. And thank you so
And
much for
I happened to be the messed up one.
great stuff. Now, another thing that you raised was obviously the parents were busy and you had multiple caretakers that were, looking after you. Would that have also created a lack of accountability, as in, if I'm not responsible or if I don't act right, I'm not going to see this person again anyway. I'll be with another caretaker. Or was it picking up on different influences based on the different people that you were dealing with at that particular time?
I don't think it was really the accountability issue because, to be honest, even when I lived with these different caretakers, it was never for a very long term, right? It was like this neighbor for a few months, and then this aunt for a few months, and then another neighbor for a year. So I don't really have very strong memories of my time as a toddler. I just remember that I stayed in these very, very different houses, and because these people are not my real parents, right? So they're just going to treat me as a third kid. And very often, these people who take care of me, they are people who don't come from well-to-do families as well. So they're probably given some money by my parents to take care of me. Yeah, so they have their own kids. And I am like the third or fourth or fifth, I call them like a third class turnip within the house. Oh, I'm just going to take you in because your mother is giving me money. So very often you would just be treated like a third class citizen, right? And I remember there was one of these nannies who was taking care of me. She had three children by herself. So I was like, that's nothing, right? So whenever I had fights with her son, we were kids, we'll fight. And she would break us up. And what she would always make me do, I remember, is to kneel in the kitchen and just pull my earlobes like that while she's cooking dinner. And I would have to be in that kneeling earlobe position for at least 30 minutes while she's cooking.
Mm.
And then only when she said, okay, now you can get up, then I can get up, right? So I remember those very vividly. Like I was the only one punished. And
Mm.
the other thing I remember was there was one time pretty late at night, I think it's 10, 11 o'clock, pretty late for a child. I was sleeping. And then I remember very clearly hearing one of the husband of that nanny came home and he brought supper for the family. And he woke up the whole family to eat supper, except waking me up. So all of these little things I have never forgotten, right? So I've always asking myself, why is it that I'm not important? Why is it that I'm always the one being picked on? Why is it that people don't seem to like me? So I've always had that struggle since I was young.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I think the statement that you just mentioned there about the trauma, not necessarily things that happened to you, but what you went through or what happened to you while you're going through that particular event, that could have been what was happening there. Now, you also did mention that maybe school, you were not really good at studies and things of that nature, but was there any expectation from the parents for you to at least do well? And was there any repercussions if nothing like that happened?
No expectations. As long as you finish high school, you're done, girl. Because I think I was at the point of my teenage life whereby the principal was literally calling my mom and say, you know, we want to expel your daughter. She's not a good thing for our school, right? Because she is like smoking and she's beating people up and she's running away and all of that. So the principal was like, I want this girl out of my school. And I
Mm,
remember how many times my mother had to be called while she was working in the office, and the principal just say, we are expelling Cindy today, and she had to take a bus from her office and come to my school just to beg the principal, please give her one more chance. And that
mm.
happened multiple times, and even until today she still reminds me of it. You wouldn't have any education if not for me going to the school to beg your school principal. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So the expectation of my parents was just finish high school, and then
Mm,
I don't even care if you do well, as long as you kind of pass, right? So the passing mark was, I mean, in Singapore, we call it secondary school. Yeah, as long as you pass 2 to 3 subjects, you're considered done, right? Like the basic education, which is now considered almost nothing. Like she wanted me to have that. So no expectations academically as long as I go through high school and secondary school and my parents were happy.
absolutely. So did you also maybe have any aspirations? I mean, I've got girls. One wants to be a pilot and another one wants to be a vet. What was there any aspiration for you as a kid that you wanted to be something?
So many aspirations, you know, and we talk about it a lot when you're a child, right? Like, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a vet. You know, for me, at one point, I wanted to be a rock singer, but I realized that that's not going to happen in Singapore. As I grew up, so my dad used to be an air crew. Yeah. So what it meant was, even as a kid, we used to have free family tickets to travel every once in a while. So I would travel and I would be in the aircraft and I would look at these beautiful flight attendants and they were all smiling with like the polished makeup and the straight teeth. And I told myself, you know what? That's such an easy job. I'm going to do that. That's so easy. You just smile and serve people. What's so difficult about that, right? And that was actually the job that I really wanted to have. And I told myself, interestingly, I think, you know how when you just get used to being in the trenches, you do not become very ambitious anymore. So while a lot of my other schoolmates were like, okay, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an astronaut, you know, I want to save the world, all I was like, I just want to be a flight attendant because I thought that that was just the easiest thing to do. And I didn't even believe I could do anything else. So that was when I hit probably at the age of 16, I think that was really the only thing I wanted. That was the only thing I believed I could do. Mm.
Absolutely. So you just wanted to finish high school, you just wanted to be a flight attendant, but what materialized? What happened after high school?
Oh, so I became a flight attendant actually. I applied for it multiple times and I got in. And after high school, you know, I did take up some part-time job for a while. And at the age of about, I think it was 18 to 19, I joined the airline and I ended up flying for this airline for 6 years until I was 25 years old. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So my dream in a sense came true, but the dream turned out to be a bit more of a nightmare instead.
Absolutely. Great. So maybe you're the right person to ask. Why are the bags of nuts so small in an airline? Is that so that it doesn't add to the weight of the flight? Is or
Small, it's meant to, you know, I have no idea what's the answer to that question, but I I think it's meant to just fill you up for a while. It's not meant to like make you overly full, right? So even like alcohol, I remember you're not supposed to like give them a full glass. It's always just nice enough. I think it's just also rationing for
yes,
the other passengers. If it's a long flight, you know, you just want to make sure you have enough.
absolutely. Now, were you doing domestic flights or international flights?
International flights, international
Absolutely.
flights. So
Right.
I think I've traveled almost to all parts of the world, the major cities I've been there.
Absolutely. And what's been your biggest highlight in the world of travel?
Biggest highlight. Oh, you know, it's so interesting that a lot of people they want to travel. They want to, right? I mean, it's glamorous for you to think about, oh, today I'm going to New York, tomorrow I'm going to be in London, going to be having dinner in Paris. It's a very lonely journey. And you
Mm.
really wouldn't know until you're in there. And I realized that on the outside it was like so glamorous, right? I really didn't like it. I feel so alone already. I don't feel good about myself, and now I'm alone. it didn't help. You just had to really be really independent. You had to grow up at a very young age. And I think one of the things I really struggled with was at that time, the airline that I joined at that time, it could be quite different now, but this was my experience. The airline that I joined, the culture wasn't, it was a little bit petty. So there was a lot of bullying, quite a bit of,
You
in a sense, like
you would have
hazing, right?
fallen right in place. I mean, bullying was your signature move.
Yeah, but now I'm being bullied. It's a totally different thing now. I'm not bullying other people. So now I'm like the school gangster, and now I'm going brand new, starting full circle again and getting bullied. It
Mm,
was not easy. I think, I mean, because I joined when I was 19, I was so young. And at that time, I just wanted this job. And then you go in there and people were not that nice, and you are like the lowest life form. So it kind of went full circle back to when I started to think about my grandmother and how badly she treated me again. So it
mm,
was like mini trauma upon mini trauma. And
'cause
that again made me feel like I was never good enough, right? So I think the bullying must have the hardest part of the bullying probably lasts within the first 3 months to 6 months until I learned how to become a people pleaser and of course to become a little bit better at what I do. Then I think the bullying slowly.
and
Mm.
obviously, you would have, like you said, 6 years in this space, and that was your experience of how it went. What did you do after that?
After that, I left the airline, and subsequently, I fell really sick, and I guess we will talk about that in a while. And then wasn't working for a year, and when I recovered, I went back to a sales role, and I'm grateful for having friends around me who introduced me to jobs. So I eventually went to do corporate sales, and I was in the corporate sales role for a good 1 decade. And after that, I then had a terrible midlife crisis, and I decided I would leave. Again, bad decisions, and I
Mm,
would leave and do something brand new. This was when I started to embark on my current journey now of becoming a speaker trainer and coach. But that was gruelingly hard, and I've learned so much along the way. But I'm very happy to be where I am now.
fantastic. So you did mention, you getting sick. Maybe you can touch up on that, and also, what it was like in the sales role. What was like a typical day for you?
Yeah, no, maybe I'll just talk about the
Yes.
falling sick first. So basically, what happened to me was I was diagnosed with this condition called avascular necrosis. So if you don't know what that means, it's basically a hip joint degeneration disease. And I was only 25 years old then when I had that. So I remember feeling pain in my legs for a couple of weeks. And at that time, I was running a lot, right? So I thought it was just like a sprain or a little injury. It was no big deal. And then the pain didn't stop. I eventually went to see different doctors and finally got, scans, x-rays, see all sorts of scans done. And I remember sitting in the orthopedic surgeon's office with my mom. And I had all the x-rays all laid out in front of me. And my mom was there with me. I was 25 years old. And he told me that, Cindy, there are 4 stages to this disease called avascular necrosis, and you are on stage 4. You now have the hip joints of a 90-year-old woman. 90-year-old. I was 25 years old then.
25.
Yeah, I was 25. And he says, this condition is not something that is reversible. You can't just take medication and you get healed, right? Nothing, right? Because your hip joints have totally worn out. The cartilage, the bones have worn out. Yeah. So the only thing I can do at this point for you is I could potentially take a bone from your knee and prop it up on your hip. But most of the time, that's not going to last you for very long. So most of the time, people would just have to live with the pain, and at some point they just will not be able to put up with the pain anymore, and they would actually make a final decision to just live their life in the wheelchair. So
Wow.
he told me, I'd like you to go home and get a contractor to renovate your home, because there's a high chance you'll be living your life in a wheelchair. That's exactly what he told me. Yeah, so it was that. And so there's a sunlight to this story. I did not go through that surgery with that surgeon because I didn't trust him. I decided not to do anything for a while because I didn't know what to do. And for me, I was also thinking maybe I could get some spiritual healing, right? So I was thinking about all of that. So I come from a Christian family. So we were going to church, we were praying. In the end, we found another doctor. He is one of those, he goes to UK and he does actually leg lengthening for people. very special orthopedic surgeon in Singapore, goes to the. So we went to get a second opinion from him, and he says that, you know what, you're just gonna now live your life normally until to such a point whereby you feel you cannot live a quality life anymore, because I couldn't even walk without pain anymore at some point. And he says, I'm gonna do a total hip joint replacement for you. So I eventually did that first on my left and then my right leg on 2 different years, because the surgery is so major that you can't do both at one time, right? So what he eventually did was to, okay, this is going to sound a bit gross, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay, he eventually had to cut off my existing diseased hip joint and put in titanium ones. And that's how the name titanium hipster came along. I've been living with titanium hips now for.
And obviously, this has sort of stopped the progression that was happening with the disease, right?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, right? Because one of the questions my mom asked was, how did this happen to my daughter? You know, I was young then, and we don't have any family history of this. How
Yeah.
could Cindy have a hip joint so totally degenerated, like she was an old woman? And the doctor started, they had to diagnose and investigate. So he started asking me a couple of questions, asking me about my lifestyle, what I do, and all that. He eventually came to the conclusion that this happened because of severe alcoholism. I was a very heavy drinker, a lot of substance abuse, and as well as very severe eating disorder. So all of that totally messed up my body. And I was also having some of my female menstrual issues at that time. So all of that came in, and the degeneration was just like rapid.
Okay. So half of the time, people might be doing things in the wanting to maybe scratch an itch, but not realizing that this might actually turn around and be the thing that will put them on a whole different path, which exactly is what you went through. So if you're looking at this at 25, your whole future would have just been thrown in front of you like that. How did you proceed with that sort of information?
To be honest, I couldn't proceed. I couldn't at all. My life just came to a standstill, right? Even just thinking back when I was in that room, I looked at my mom, and I just kind of went into this small girl mode again. Mommy, what do I do? You have no answers, right? At that time, it was like, my life has just started. You mean now it's ended? I was 25, I have a future in front of me, but now it's just ended. So I mean, there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of grief, there was a lot of, I think, shame knowing that I had done this to myself. Nobody did it to me, I did it to myself. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of confusion as to, do I go for surgery? What do I do? And there was a lot of physical pain, because the kind of pain that I was experiencing was like a traveling nerve pain throughout the whole leg.
Yeah.
And on certain days, the pain could be like a level 2. That means level 2, that means it's good, right? You can still go out and have lunch with your friends. And on certain days, the pain will be level 10. That means I could not even stand. So
Mm.
what this meant for me was that there is zero predictability in my life. I cannot make an appointment with my friend and say, hey, I want to go for dinner with you tomorrow, because I don't know whether I can stand tomorrow. So I think that just caused so much like physical pain and mental pain that I had to just do nothing for 1 year. Think about how am I going to manage myself, heal myself? I don't know what to do with myself. And at that time, and I think there was just this thing about the shame of not having money, and the shame of having your parents still taking out $100 from their wallet and say, you know what, I'm just going to give this to you because you've got absolutely zero savings. I think it was all that misery that came together. And I'm so glad that eventually I went through that total hip joint degeneration. I'm so glad that I did that, because that totally changed my life and gave me a new lease of life. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry if this is just so heavy.
I understand. Well, but I really appreciate you. I mean, obviously, you're very open about, going through your near bankruptcy, your addiction, and this serious health challenge. So many people would have wanted to just sweep it under the rug and, just not revisit it. But you're now utilizing this as your platform. I think maybe it's because you've got strong hips now. You can stand and, move the world and with your message and everything else that comes along with it.
Yeah, yeah. And how interesting is this? Because I never thought to tell my story, never at all. I think it was only when I stepped, because remember I was sick, right? And then I went through the total hip surgery, and then I was in corporate for 10 years. I never thought to tell anyone about that. Who cares? What are your hips are made of? Yeah, but it's only when I stepped into becoming a speaker and trainer, and then, we have mentors and coaches that say, you must share your story. I'm like, what story do I have to tell? Oh my God, I realized I've got a hip story. That's when I decided to share it a little bit more openly. And I realized that people started opening up to me as well to tell me about, the other of the struggles. It might not be a hip problem, but there's so many people out there that struggle with this self-abuse, lack of self-influence, their inability to control themselves, they're stuck in addictions. And these are all normal adults that you see on the outside, but nobody wants to talk about it, right? No
Mm,
one's talking about it, and yet these are such real problems. That there is and I know of a very good friend also in the speakers community. His name is Nick Johnson. He talks a lot about executive loneliness and how there are so many adults out there that struggle with addictions to alcohol, and because
mm.
it's a legal thing, nobody really makes a very big deal out of it. And in the first place, some of us don't even want to own up to the fact that we have these problems and struggles.
Really. And now that you've mentioned that, a lot of people that are watching right now might actually recognize patterns in their own lives, but still feel a little bit stuck. What would you say would be the first small change you made that got you to start then really focus on you and knowing that if I continue going on this path, then this might be it for me?
I think back about the time when I was drinking really heavily,
Mm,
really, really heavy. I was in my 20s. I was flying alone, right? I mean, I was overseas a lot, in hotel rooms alone a lot. And I used to drink a lot for many reasons. I didn't have strong emotional management skills. Hence, I realized that the lack of EQ can be very detrimental to your life if you don't have it. Yeah. So I didn't have emotional management skills. I struggled with self-doubt and self-confidence. I didn't know how to manage and cope. So for me, drinking was the way of managing and coping. And
wonderful.
initially, it was just fun, right? It was a beer. What's wrong with you? I'm having fun with my friends. But from one beer it became 3 beers. From 3 beers, it became a bottle of wine. From a bottle of wine to a bottle of whiskey. And after a while, whiskey didn't even help me to sleep anymore. I started having sleeping problems and insomnia. So I had to do whiskey then with sleeping pills. And then it was whiskey with 1 pill, whiskey with 2 pills, whiskey with 3 pills. So my record was actually half a bottle of Johnny Walker with 8 pills in a night. And I remember blacking out for 24 hours. I was in Copenhagen, Denmark. I woke up the next day, literally kind of not knowing where I am for the first 30 minutes. After a while, I kind of sobered up a little bit while feeling still mildly unconscious. And I remember telling myself this thing. I still went on to shower. I still put on my makeup, and I went out and I said, it's no big deal. I am still showing up for work. So I
Wow.
think my point to this is that we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves a lot of lies, and this is why I call it BS. Bull stories, okay? There are three
Mm.
types of BS: blind spots, belief systems, and bull stories. And for me, this was the biggest bull story I kept telling myself because this went on for years. Yeah, it wasn't like a one-time thing, right? I must have gone through that alcoholism and sleeping pills for a couple of years, and I kept telling myself it's no big deal. It's no big deal. You are still surviving. You still have a job. You still look professional. But until one day I realized that it was such a big deal. I had totally destroyed my body. And I think my point to this is that catch yourself, catch your own BS. Yeah. What are you telling yourself? Are you sure that it's no big deal? Would you dare to tell somebody about it? If you have
Mm.
a struggle, oh, tell somebody, tell your wife, tell your husband, tell someone, and let them tell you whether they think that it's a big deal. Because if it's not a big deal, you would tell people. So I think to own up to it, because I think a lot of people, we know what to do. Even alcoholic, what do? You go and get help from a therapist, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not too difficult. And after that, they have a program for you. But I think the first step of owning up to the fact that you have a problem is where people struggle with, because they're in denial mode. They choose to paint a picture that everything is okay. I'm living a normal life. And for me, I just had no choice but to just own up. God, like, Cindy, you are so troubled. You are so troubled. You need help. I
Right.
realized that I just could not control my life anymore. I lost all influence over myself, lost all control, lost all influence. I needed help. And I was already an adult at that time.
Absolutely. But now you work with leaders in boardrooms and organizations. Do you ever maybe see these same patterns you once struggling with showing up in these executives and high performers because they're trying to mask, like you say, something that, they are not maybe open enough to talk about, especially to either their subordinates, their loved ones, or those people that are around them?
Yes, I think so. And I think one of the things when I started doing this work, and a lot of the clients that I work with are either leaders or sales teams, right? And in huge MNC, multinational companies, global organizations, which I'm really grateful I've been given an opportunity to work with these people. And I realized that we all want one thing. A lot of us, we want influence and connection. We want, I always talk about how people we all want influence, right? We have podcasts, we want to have social media presence. We want influence on a larger scale. And then we also want influence at a spheres of people around us. But I think
Mm.
a lot of us, we don't even have influence with ourselves. Yeah. So when you don't have influence with yourself, it's very hard for you to influence people authentically when you cannot be honest with yourself powerfully. I totally believe in that because it becomes like you're just putting up a front, right? Yeah, I'm just learning a skill. I'm going to learn to speak better to influence, but maybe you have a lot of BS that you have not addressed yet. So I think for me, it's really about the enemy of my movement. Okay, a little movement here. It's like not to it's a self problem rather than a skill problem. I think skills are great. We need skills, okay? But I think beyond the skills, let's dig deeper and ask ourselves, so what is really the cause of, my team not wanting to listen to me? Why is it that I'm having problems with my spouse? Why is it that I'm making such bad decisions at work? It's always a self problem a lot more than a skill problem. So I
Ah,
think for me, it's really to just put the idea very clear out there that before you can influence authentically, you first need to influence yourself powerfully. So it starts with a lot of, so that's why I have this also like a video podcast called Own Your BS. It's really
absolutely.
being able to call it out, call out your own BS with radical honesty, clean it up, and then after that, then you can correct it. But what people do is they straight away go into correcting by learning a skill, but the skill is still covering up something that's been hiding at the back. So I'm
Mm.
I'm just kind of feeling like, we need a lot more reflection and going back to what is this BS inside me that I'm stuck with, and we need to call it out.
Absolutely. I like that. And you having been a flight personnel, you would probably have been telling people a lot to put their mask on first before they actually can help any other person. Because, if you can't influence yourself, which is the mask influence, then you're not going to be able to influence all the other people on the flight there. So maybe that would have been a bit of a plus in your history there. But you went on and wrote a book, and it's called Breakthrough Your BS to Influence Yourself. Let's talk about that. What exactly do you mean by BS?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like BS would be, the hidden demons, right? Yeah, it's something that we can't see. It's something that we won't question or refuse to challenge. Yeah, so we can't see would be the blind spots, right? Things that everyone else can see, but we ourselves can't see. And then the second BS is the belief systems, the shoulds and the must, and the things that we've inherited since we were children. So, for example, my belief system, okay, and this is common among Asians, okay, that men must be the one that earns the money for the household, that kind of a thing. Yeah, it's a belief system that's been brought up, right? Whether it's true or not, according to whom, according to your own belief system. Yeah, that by 20 years old, you must have this. The belief system is if you're not, and I used to have this, if you're not number one, you're not worthy. That was my belief system. And some people are not even aware that they have those belief systems. And then the third one would be the bull stories. The bull stories would be the stories that we fabricate to avoid discomfort, the lies that we tell ourselves. Now, so these are the three BSs that we have. So identify which one is yours. And I think most importantly is to be able to call them out. Yeah. So I feel like, when it comes to BS, it's really about, I think, the ability to shine a light on it, to shine a light on your BS, not to shame it, but when you expose it to light, that's when, the darkness dissipates and you can deal with the problem. It's only when you keep hiding the problem, you keep the BS under wraps and it festers. It keeps growing. Yeah, whatever you hide in the dark actually starts to multiply. Whatever you shine in the light, it dissipates. So the
Mm,
point here is, can we call it out? Not to shame ourselves, but to say, well, you know what, honestly, this is a problem that I'm struggling with. I need help. And I think that
absolutely.
is the most liberating thing anyone can do for themselves.
Absolutely, because if you put a shining light on something, it gets seen, and automatically that becomes a relief for a lot of people, because so many people are holding on to things because they're afraid if somebody knows, then they are maybe going to face embarrassment or ridicule or rejection. But half of the time, once that thing is in the spotlight, there's no hiding anymore. And I think that's the reason why so many people are being held hostage based on things they would not want people seeing in the public that they probably committed or they did. And so you have a simple framework, which is call it out, clean it up, and correct it. Can you maybe explain how, somebody watching today can actually start applying this today?
Certainly. I mean, we're just going to bring this to more like practical problems at the workplace. Okay. So one of the things, in this International Women's Day season, International Women's Month, and got a couple of speaking engagements coming up. So we always want to address some of the problems at work. What are people struggling with? What can women do a little bit more to empower themselves and empower people? So I'm working on this speech, and I think a lot of the main problems that we see at work would be things like disengagement, burnout, lack of psychological safety. Yeah, and it's very easy to say, you know what, it's the leader's fault, they overwork me, but if we want to ask ourselves, what does it mean when we are calling out our own BS, right? So you and I could be working in the same company, we'll just go like, oh, we're so busy, we're so busy, we're so busy. But then what's the BS behind it? It probably could be because you are working really hard because your definition of success is that you have to be busy all the time. Yeah, you don't dare to allow yourself to be free for a moment because you feel that that makes you feel important. Yeah, so call out that BS, yeah, and don't just perpetuate it, right? Like as a group, I think we don't. So when we come together as an organization, that's when we perpetuate these collective BSs, yeah, and we all smile on the outside and we say that it's not a problem, but it's actually an individual problem that we can all deal with ourselves. So call it out. What is the actual reason that you're being so busy? Yeah, what's kind of driving you being, and I struggled with that. At one point I was working just every single day, even over the weekends, and my husband had to be the one to ask me, what are you so afraid of? Why are you working so hard? Yeah, and I realized that, there was a BS I had to call out, and then just to clean it up and accept the fact that, you have a tendency like that. And then just go back to the origin and ask yourself, what could be driving this? Yeah. So clean it up. Yeah, and to just, acknowledge the fact that, that what, it's not true that my success is defined by me being busy all the time. Yeah, it's so not true. I think we want to be able to manage that part, right? And then the last part corrected is, how can you redesign new patterns, new behaviors, and new narratives to help you to change this behavior? Because, surface behaviors, we can change and then we forget about it. But when you go straight to the BS, you're changing the problem from the root. And then
Mm,
when we can do that successfully with ourselves, that's when we can empower other people to do the same. You can change the conversation for people who are going through the same problems.
absolutely. But obviously this sort of transformation isn't a one-time event, it's
It is.
something that comes layered, and you have to continuously work on it. Otherwise, you start, it atrophies, right? So what
Mm.
does maybe daily self-leadership look like, maybe for yourself now, or for the person that's watching right now?
I even until now, I still have those BSs, right? So we are never ever done with ourselves. I think the game here, it's not to be perfect, but it's to catch it early. That you've been so good at catching your own BS early. You go, oh, that thought came in. Oh my God, I'm behaving this way. Oh, da, 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 da. And then you go like, I realize that's actually a BS that has been hounding me. The game here is to catch it early and to practice it long enough that you don't linger in the BS and that let that overwhelm you. That really is just being mindful of your thoughts, your belief systems, and your blind spots, and the stories you keep telling yourself. You want to be aware of that. That's the first place. The awareness and the self-insight is so key. And for me, in a lot of my coaching programs, we use the Enneagram as a framework to understand your psychological, how you tend to think, your psyche, right? So I think just having that awareness of your tendencies, the way you tend to think. So for example, for myself, I tend to be really competitive. Yeah. And until now, I still am, but I manage it, right? So every time when I go, I work very hard and because I'm thinking at the back of my mind, I forgot because I realized that I'm still trying to be number one. I catch
Mm.
myself and I say, that's no longer important for you, Cindy. That's not the person that you want to be anymore. Yeah. I mean, work hard, but don't eat yourself up and get yourself all bent out of shape just to be number one. Because we are driven by our belief systems, and these are all so hidden. We're not aware that this becomes a pattern, right? Which is the word you mentioned earlier at the beginning. And if we are unaware of these patterns, we just get stuck in it over and over again until you can break through it. Then that's when change truly happens.
So from what I'm hearing, it's like how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
I love that quote, and yes, exactly, exactly. I think that's a huge one. I once heard that quote when a mentor recommended me to this 3-day program. And that time that was after my hip joint operation, and I still had a ton of BS, still had a lot of problems I was struggling with. I hated my job. My mentor said, since you're such an unhappy person, I'm going to recommend that you go and take a course. So she told me, you can take this three. I said, what's this 3-day program, to take leave and attend a 3-day program, to pay for it with my own pocket? And she said it's a self-awareness program. I had no idea what self-awareness was at that time. I went through the 3-day program. On the third day, the coach of the program came to me and he says that, Cindy, I noticed you're a very passive person. I said, what do you mean I'm very passive? Every time when I ask you to have a discussion with somebody, you just keep quiet. When I ask you to share, you keep quiet. When I ask you to do something, you'll just sit there. So why are you here then? You paid for the program yourself. And I remember not having any answer for him. And I would just go like, well, I guess I'm just like that. I'm just the kind of person that prefers to sit by the sidelines and to observe people before I do anything. And that's exactly when that quote came. He says, how you do anything is how you do everything. I'd
Mm.
like you to consider how passive you are with this program and think about how this passiveness is also showing up in the other areas of your life. And
Mm.
that was like, oof, this wind came through my face, right? And like, oh my God, yes. All I knew how to do was to complain about how my life sucked, but I've never really taken proactive steps to change things for myself.
Absolutely. And speaking of this passiveness, a lot of people would just maybe see certain things happening around them, but don't maybe have the words or the language to express them. So they just maybe keep it to themselves. So if somebody's watching right now and maybe they're, listening to this conversation and they're probably stuck in the patterns that they can't break, what may be the first honest question that they should actually ask themselves right now, just so that they can literally get out of that and put the thing in the spotlight so that they can actually start addressing it?
That's such a good question because sometimes these things appear in little small, little things, little problems, right, at our workplace, and we kind of just sometimes we gloss through it and we go like, ah, it's small thing, no big deal. Yeah. So what if I yelled at my husband? It's no big deal. And it's true, it might not be a big deal. I think the question I would ask myself is, how much do I like myself when I'm by myself?
Mm.
How much do you respect and like yourself when you're by yourself? Because for the longest time, you can say on the surface, I was pretty successful. I was earning a good amount of money. I was in corporate. I was flying. People around me would say that Cindy is successful. But I was hating myself. I didn't respect myself because I felt that I was toxic. I didn't know what I was doing. So I think that the thing is, I truly believe that your happiness actually is very much dependent on how much you like yourself when you're by yourself. Yeah, that's one thing. And the second thing I would say is that imagine if you're 80 years old right now. Yeah. And you're gonna ask yourself this question, as don't you look back and you ask yourself this question, am I the person that I want to be? Am I the person that I want to be? Is this the person that you truly want to be? I think that will shake things up a little bit for you. Because we could be like that, but we don't have to remain like that. We can always be better. And when we work on influencing ourselves, that's where the influence around us really, really has a huge ripple.
Wow. Absolutely. And I mean, so many things have come out of this conversation today, but I know a lot of people are going to be trying to reach out and ask so many questions and figure out, how do I call it out? How do I clean it up? And how do I correct it? So where do you suggest people should go or maybe start off, in terms of maybe reaching out to you or just calling it out for themselves and so they can clean it up and correct it?
I think the most important thing is, like I mentioned earlier, be really honest with yourself. Get a therapy if you have to. If you're struggling with a certain something, talk to someone. Start there. If you want to reach out to me for a conversation, please feel free to reach out. Okay, I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. You can search for me, Cindy Tien. Go to my website, cindytien.com. And I think I don't have all the solutions to solve other people's problems, but I think my point here is be brutally honest with yourself and yet be gently compassionate with yourself. And my message to people out there is a lot of us, we're so busy, we're doing so many things, right? We're working, we're branding ourselves, we're building our businesses, we're trying to earn money. I think don't just think about who is the person you want to be, also be done sure about the person that you don't want to be. Yeah, marry all of that, and I'm sure you'll get there. The fact that the person wants to have a change, it really says a lot, and I'm sure you'll get there if you honestly work on yourself.
Absolutely. I will make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can actually make their way and figure it out themselves. Now, Cindy, obviously you've taken us through a journey of, where it all started and what happened in between and the phoenix that actually rose from the ashes. But, some people would look at this, Cindy, and say, you've got your health back, you've got your life back now, and you could just leave your life so that you don't have to overexert yourself and put yourself in the same positions you were in below. Or somebody would say, if I was in her shoes, I'd just say, okay, I'm good, and then walk away. But you didn't do that. Now you're helping others and you're sending the elevator down so that others can also experience a happier existence. That is very selfless of you. So thank you so much for the journey that you've taken and for sharing your story with us on the Online Prosperity Show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for, creating this platform for people to share their stories so that other people can connect with our stories and hopefully it helps them as well. Because I truly believe that, a purpose-driven life is what makes, a well-lived life when you are able to clear up your own mess and you now pave the way for other people to do the same. That's a very well-lived life.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. What an incredible conversation. I mean, for those that are watching right now, you notice that Cindy's journey really reminds us of something powerful. The greatest breakthroughs don't just happen when you're trying to change everybody else. They actually happen when you turn the mirror on yourself and then you see how you can influence yourself. And as Cindy would have said in her past life, you put your mask on first. And I think that is one thing that we should really take literally, because she went from addiction and financial collapse to now becoming a global speaker, helping leaders influence themselves and others. And I think her story just really shows us that transformation, it's not about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about honesty and courage. And as she, reiterated that how you do anything is how you do everything. All right. So if today's episode really resonated with you, I highly recommend that you check out Cindy's book. It's called Inside, and it is a breakthrough for all your BS in order to be able to influence yourself. And if your organization is looking for a speaker or an executive coach who will actually challenge your thinking and transform the way that teams actually lead and communicate, I think Cindy is the person that you want on your stage. And all the links to Cindy will be in the description below. And I'll make sure that she receives any messages that might emanate from the chat. But before we go, I just want to hear something from you that's watching this right now. What's one pattern in your life that you've actually had to confront and change? If you listed in the comments below, I think your story might actually inspire somebody else who's watching this. And also Cindy will be in the comments there, just checking out to see how you are literally calling it out and following through. As she says, that we have to call it out, clean it up, and correct it. So I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do with this information today. Until next time, bye for now.